Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and I've got another prize-winning replay from the 300,000 subscriber replay competition for you. Congratulations to Adrian B 1979 for winning in the Tier 10 German heavy tank, the E100. Now this tank is super popular, and the entire of the German heavy tank line is, especially on the European server. I can imagine on the Russian regions that I think that the KV-1 and that line will be more popular, but at least on Europe, the Tiger and the E100 is king. And this was my first Tier 10 tank. When I first got into World of Tanks back in 2011, I didn't really know too much about armored vehicles and tanks. And now I feel so ignorant looking myself back then that I didn't know the difference between most of them. Originally, I wanted to go as quickly as I could towards the Tiger, and if that was the same for you guys, let me know in the comments down below. Were you knowledgeable about World War II armor before you got into the game? Or has this really kind of elevated your knowledge of such an interesting part of history, like it has for me? So, ignorant QuickyBaby back in 2011 just wanted to rush straight towards the Tiger, and I did. And then obviously, naturally, progression towards the E100 was what happened. And I enjoyed this vehicle. It's a great tank. It's got the highest alpha damage on any heavy that has high penetration as well, with 235mm of penetration. Now that is actually the lowest of any of the Tier 10 heavies, I believe, but none of them pack the same alpha damage punch that the E100 can, with its 150mm gun. Now of course there is a choice of two guns on this tank. You can use the mouse gun, you can use the 150mm E100 gun. Choice is yours. So Adrian is playing on Swamp. He's in a fairly interesting matchup here, really. It's fairly even. There's a third of the enemy team, a Tier 10s, quite a few Tier 9s, but unfortunately for him, none of the really soft Tier 8 heavies and mediums that the E100 likes to chew up, being replaced by light tanks that usually are going to be able to outmaneuver this vehicle. Now I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. Adrian does what a lot of people do in the E100, and that is compensate for this terrible 235mm of penetration by slinging these 334mm heat shells. Now I'm going to talk about this as the replay goes on, whether the shells were necessary in the situation or whether the AP could have worked. And at least for the first two shots of this game, one into the E75 and then another one into a Tier 9 heavy tank, the ST1, it would have been perfectly fine to use AP rounds. That last shot on the E75 though, there was a chance, considering that the angle that the turret was at, that maybe an AP round could have bounced there if it got a poor penetration roll. But most likely it would have still been able to go in, and this would have certainly gone in as well. So 4 shots, 3,000 damage. What a great start to the game for Adrian here. But just for the discussion between whether heat rounds are necessary, or whether he would have been able to get away with AP rounds, I'm pretty sure he would have done exactly the same amount of damage if he'd been firing standard ammunition. Let's try not to focus on that. Let's try and focus on the mammoth game that Adrian is going to have. Unfortunately for him, he rolled a little low there with his 4th shot of the game. You can't be too disappointed after the first 4 did roll average or above average. Well, actually the first one was 745, which was more or less exactly on. So that's left the VK on a little bit of health. And he aims at the turret of the VK. That's completely the right thing to do, especially considering that that poor Tier 9 German heavy tank is using the stock turret, which has some terrible armor. You really, on that vehicle, need to try and upgrade the turret as quickly as you can, or you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Interestingly, Adrian decides to shoot at the spaced armor of the ST1 there, and remember that heat rounds don't do very well against spaced armor at all. He gave himself a much smaller chance of being able to penetrate that shot than probably if he'd aimed at the flat surface of the ST1's turret. So Adrian has created a small graveyard behind him here, taking out a few vehicles, 3 combined with his team efforts as well, but they're not doing too well. Even though he's on 4,270 damage in the first 4 minutes of this replay, his team are still down by a couple of tanks. And he's got to be careful because there is a Waffenträger auf E100 on the horizon, and that is not a tank that you want to take lightly. That sneaky German Tier 10 tank destroyer can basically kill the entire health of an E100 in a single magazine, which is something that you really don't want to have happen to you. So I didn't manage to see what the hell has gone on here with this FV215B183. Not sure if he had a disagreement with a player or a bit of bad RNG. He has gone blue, but he's also managed to get his score positive, so I guess he's still doing a little bit of good work there. Maybe I can watch back this replay and see what happened. He must be close to a ban right now. So the E100, certainly not the fastest of vehicles, trundling along here nicely, and I like what Adrian has done here, and that is to reload a high explosive round. A high explosive round will butter through the soft turret armor of the WTL E100. 1,059 damage done there, and I expect a huge amount of module damage to that Tier 10 German tank destroyer. Great play there by Adrian. He's very aware of the situation of what ammo types I guess he should be using. Although I think he could have saved a bunch of credits by using AP rounds at the beginning rather than heat rounds, and it wouldn't have made too much of a difference to the game. But a great high explosive round there, taking off half of the hit points of that Waffenträger Alpha E100. And that is a tank that you certainly want to get rid of in the E100. You don't want to leave that around for too long. Considering especially he's a very good player, and he's also secured 3 kills of the game. Another important tank to take out on the enemy team was that Tier 9 French self-propelled gun. That Batchat could harass the hell out of Adrian. The E100's armor is good, but when there's 8 minutes left on a game, you do not want to leave an artillery piece in it. When you've got such a large German tank, it's very hard to miss. And right now, it looks like that Waffenträger Alpha E100 is managing to shoot Adrian from behind a bush and just bounced all of his shells. The E100 probably absorbed great shot there. At least 2,500 damage there into the tracks and the side armor of the vehicle, and Adrian is putting pressure up on the cap circle. A great shot there with another high explosive round into the 5120 removes that Tier 9 French heavy tank autoloader. Some great work here, making some good use of these high explosive rounds. As you can see, the E100 carries a huge amount of ammunition. Really, that's enough ammunition to kill the enemy team 2 times over by yourself. Not that that ever really is going to happen, but it just provides you with great flexibility. On my E100, I think I take at least 10 to 15 high explosive shells, because sometimes they, with the high caliber round that they are, they can be the best round to use in a situation, especially against tanks like the WT Alpha E100, like the artillery that we've seen. Also, when you're firing at a 5120 turret with the funky angling, maybe your AP or your heat rounds are going to bounce, but the high explosive is guaranteed to splash over him, generally going to do that 300 damage. So Adrian is currently 20 seconds away from winning the game. The WT Alpha 100 comes around the corner to try and interrupt the cap. Adrian shuts him down, his 5th kill. Great result. And now he loads a heat round. Okay, so he's done with his high explosive rounds. He wants to now try and step up the damage that he's going to do. Now the ST1 on his team finally gives it up, and that leaves Adrian in a 1 versus 4 situation. Fires a heat round there into the Leopard. Would have done okay with the AP round there, but for all he knows, he would have to fight the VK in the E100, which you could use those heat rounds for. Now Adrian is loading heat rounds again. I think right now he would do better to load high explosive, but this is a very, very stressful situation as 2 very mobile tanks are trying to flank around him. He auto-aims at the 1390, shuts him down, and continues to load a heat round. Probably would do much better with a high explosive round here. That heat round might get absorbed or just have a real bad chance on the Leopard 1. Will he be able to get this Leopard 1 round in time? Turn your tracks and your turret. Wow, I did not think that one was going to go in. Must have gone right into the back of that Tier 10 German medium tank. But a fantastic result there, taking out a very good player and stopping him from circle strafing him to death. And do you know what that E100 has also just provided for Adrian? A great opportunity to go hull down on in the cap circle, which puts even more pressure on the 2 remaining German heavy tanks. Oh gosh, that E100 is very healthy, having 91% of his hit points. Adrian aims the shot perfectly, but it doesn't go at all where he wants it. Doesn't fly into that lower plate, and the E100 doesn't take any damage. Luckily for him though, the E100 also doesn't manage to do damage to Adrian's tank. Now that's where the heat rounds on this vehicle really do come into their own. And that's the first round in the game which really wouldn't have penetrated at all if he had been firing AP. That VK turret is not stuck, unlike the previous VK that he shot. But there we see where the heat rounds on this tank are useless. The E100's tracks are very thick spaced armor, and heat gets absorbed. And because the heat gets absorbed, he would have done better with an AP round there against the E100. The enemy E100 tracks him, stopping him from capping out. He only needed another 10 seconds to be able to win this game, and he rightly focuses now on the VK4502B. He turns his armor towards the E100, wanting to ricochet him, and decides to angle his armor away from the VK, and also angles his turret, bouncing a shot from behind. Now can he take out the VK4502B? Looks like the heat round is more than enough to go through the turret on that tank. While that turret is decent and quite a small target, the problem with high-tier German turrets like that, or on the E50 or the E50M, is that they're quite flat without the spaced covering on them, and that means that heat rounds such as this are going to be able to butter them. Now Adrian gets penetrated by the enemy E100, going right through the lower plate and making a gigantic hole in his vehicle. This means that he's got 943 hit points left. That's enough to take a shot from the enemy E100. Take your time, Adrian. Oh, no, that wasn't quite aimed. It went slightly left and into the mantler armor of the enemy E100, and so he does no damage. This is a very awkward fight between two German super heavies at the end of this game. Now, I like what Adrian does here. He angles his turret. Great work. Waits to bounce the E100, and then fires a heat round at the enemy E100. And unfortunately, what we're kind of seeing here is the difference between using heat and not at the end of the game against the correct targets. This is where Adrian should have saved his heat rounds for taking on vehicles which, frankly, you have a massive advantage against when you use your heat rounds. So, that one rolled for 744, putting Adrian to a nearly 11,000 damage. Now he's going to reload a high explosive round to be able to finish off this E100. The E100's trying to get into position to avoid a shot. Adrian shoots it and hits the dead AMX 1390, I believe, in front of him, failing to hit the E100 and damaging his tank. Oh gosh, don't mess it up now, Adrian. A fire might be enough with a high damage roll. The E100 fails to penetrate his tank again. Can he finish him off? Not the best place to shoot the high explosive round, only managing to do 44 damage. I feel like if you'd shot him in the turret there, it would have probably done enough. Come on, Adrian, finish this one off. Finish it off, man. You can do it. That's a good place. Right into the track armor will do it. Slam dunk. 11,163 damage and his 9th kill of the game, getting through a 1 versus 4 situation. What a fantastic result for Adrian. I seriously did not think he was going to be able to get through this game when I watched it the first time. Adrian, I can only imagine how your heart was going in this round. This was a very tense game, and you were under a hell of a lot of pressure. And it kind of did show you made a few mistakes, but you didn't let it affect you so much. You stood firm, and you did the basics right to be able to take down a monster round that I've never been able to achieve in my first ever Tier 10 tank. The E100 is certainly one of those vehicles where the difference between AP and heat is dramatic, that can make this one of the most expensive Tier 10 heavy tanks to play if you choose to use them. However, Adrian showed great use of high explosive rounds in the E100 here, devastating that Waffenträger Alpha E100, one of the most dangerous players and dangerous tanks on the enemy team, probably changing the outcome. He followed it up with a good shot on the artillery, although probably an AP round would have sufficed there. And the 50-120 that he managed to take out, again, maybe the AP round would have worked, but the high explosive rounds, I felt like just made it safer. The only thing I really didn't like about this replay was the frankly unnecessary amount of heat that you fired at the start of the game, Adrian. I feel like those first 3, 4, 5 rounds that you fired would have been absolutely fine to fire AP there. And again, when you were engaging the AMX 1390 in the Leopard, while you were under pressure, heat actually probably put you at a disadvantage there, and high explosive or AP rounds would have been just as good, if not better, when you take into account that heat doesn't have any normalization on the shell if you hit an angled surface. While for a lot of players that will detract from the credibility of the match, I don't think it takes enough away. This was just a fantastic round, and Adrian, I'm super happy for you. that you managed to have such a fantastic game. And what I love about this replay is many statistics elitists would have written you off, Adrian B. And yet here you are, more experience than I've ever had in a tier 10 tank, more damage than I've ever had in my 30,000 battles, and winning a competition that even my best replays of all time wouldn't have had a hope of contending in. And so that's why I find it only fair to award Adrian the top prize in the competition. Congratulations, you are going to pick up the infamous and sought after Type 59. Enjoy it and let me know if it works out for you. And let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats. So Adrian got the highest experience of any tier 10 tank in the replay competition and also one of the top damages overall, which isn't a surprise considering this was 11,163 damage, over 5 times what anyone else on his team was able to achieve. There is no doubt that Adrian pretty much put the entirety of the rest of his team on his back and carried them to victory, making the difference in this round. And for that, he got a Radley Walters medal, the high caliber, and a steel wall. And boy, what a steel wall this was. 11,720 damage blocked by his armor. And a huge amount of that was from the Waffenträger auf E100 that we couldn't see when he was shooting at him. And he blocked 3,000 damage from that guy. We should also mention that that high explosive round that he put into the Waffenträger auf E100 damaged his gun, his commander, and his loader. And maybe that's why he wasn't able to accurately target some of the weak points on the E100. That high explosive round certainly did shift the momentum of this game. Adrian fired 2,650mm shells this game, and he barely managed to make a profit. Due to all of those heat rounds he fired, his ammo cost was astronomical. But hey, a profit's a profit, right? And got 7,821 experience for his triple. This was 1,738 base experience points, which is the highest experience in an E100 of all time. And not just by a little, by nearly 100 base experience. Adrian, thank you so much for sending me this replay. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and congratulations to you. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this video as well. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to see no matter how many tier 10 tanks Wargaming add to the game, that the E100 is still the daddy, then click through up here and you can go through to a fantastic round by Basti. Or use that more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen to see a plethora of E100 games. And let me know in the comments down below if the E100 was your first tier 10 tank. And when you got into World of Tanks, did you know much about World War II armor? And what was the first vehicle that you really wanted to go to and why? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.